There was one prisoner in Australia who planned very meticulously how to escape the facility. He very carefully checked, particularly the arrival and the departure time of the food truck, which comes a couple of times in a month. So he studied that very carefully for several months, and on D-Day, he finally made it to hide himself inside the food truck when the driver was busy delivering the food. And the truck left the prison, and the vehicle went like a couple of hours, and the vehicle stopped. He secretly came out of the truck expecting a free world, but he discovered that the place the truck arrived was another prison. When I heard that story, it's exactly how we humans live. For example, some people feel a little lonely and they are married. Then they will have more responsibility. They would like to retire a little earlier. But after retirement, he or she can encounter some financial difficulty, etc. So there is a Korean saying, if you leave your home, troubles wait for you. So just like the Americans say, there is no place like home. Whether it is a golden prison or iron prison, it's the same prison. So the path to attain complete liberation is, according to the teaching of the Buddha, is to see into our true nature, to be awakened to our original mind. From there, we can have the freedom of mind. The scroll on the wall is a Diamond Sutra, the core scripture in Mahayana Buddhism. There are lots of English translations, but I discovered the Price and Wang's English translation is the best. So on the bench in the foyer, feel free to take. When I was in mid-20s, my teacher recommended, why don't you read or recite with no thought, not for the sake of understanding, it's me. Why don't you recite the Diamond Sutra? So I recited the Diamond Sutra, the Chinese version, so I had no idea what it means. When I started to read this scripture, all of a sudden, my eyes flooded with the tears. I did not know why. There is nothing said in its contents. But I felt that I saw my home, my true home. So, Heart Sutra is the condensed form of a Diamond Sutra. Some scholars says in China, in order for the chanting purpose, Diamond Sutra is composed of the 32 chapters. It takes like 40 minutes to recite. For the chanting purpose, they condensed this Diamond Sutra into one-page scripture or Heart Sutra. So the last passage, what the Buddha really would like to say is kate kate parakate parashankate bodhisattva. It simply means let's go home. Let's go home. Let's get awakened. When I was an intern, for 6 months, I stayed in Dongmyeong Retreat Center in Korea. That Won Buddhist retreat center also has a huge property, which has a lot of acacia tree. That tree spread very quickly, and it destroyed, ruined the other trees. Even though the flower of the acacia tree is very beautiful. So I and other male minister tried to cut the trees. But each and every spring, it comes back again and again. Why? The root is still there. Likewise, the source of our suffering, agony, whatever kind of some negative emotion or thought is our sense of self, our idea of ego entity. As we studied together, that sense of self is an illusion. That's a mental construction, not the reality. So I encourage you to continue to contemplate on that. 5 aggregates are empty. Our body and minds are empty. It arises depending on causes and the condition. It does not have any inherent existence. Just like everything, they cannot exist in and of itself. Empty of. Original Sanskrit means 5 aggregates are empty of substance. It's briefly translated. Do you know why you have a dream? Why we have a dream at night? Very mature practitioners don't have many dreams. That's true. But the reason why we have a dream, the content is very different. But when you carefully watch your dream, whether you are on the scene or behind the scene, the main character is always you. Why we have a dream? Dreams are visual manifestation of our thoughts. What's the origin of our thought? It arises from our sense of self. So our sense of self is the ultimate culprit. So as I said yesterday, ego is not the object of a hatred, my teacher told me. It's the object of a what? Investigation. If we realize that it's just an illusion, then the root of suffering becomes severed. It disappears. That's why the last interesting word of the Diamond Sutra, the last chapter, thus shall you think of this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. So Buddha asked us, we need to see this world as this illusion in order to get the freedom of mind. But whether it's a Heart Sutra or Diamond Sutra, it's very hard to understand its meaning. As you know, at the age of 29, Shakyamuni Buddha left the palace in order to search for liberation. When he was a teen, he very acutely felt that life itself is a dissatisfaction. Even though he was a prince, healthy, handsome, have a lot of things, old age, sickness, we have to depart from our loved ones, we will get old. There are, of course, some pleasant things, but Buddha thought, that's not permanent. It's disappearing. It's a fleeting. So life itself is a dukkha or dissatisfaction. When he attained great enlightenment at the age of 35, under the Bodhi tree, when his mind and heart was opened, then he was so joyful and blissful, and he would like to teach others so that others can walk on the same path to get the complete liberation. But there was one problem. What was the problem? If he tell what he experienced, then nobody would believe his word. And most of the people were not ready to become a dedicated practitioner. So he would like to enter nirvana. But according to the scripture, a lot of heavenly beings asked to Shakyamuni Buddha, well, there are some group of people who are very close to awakening. Why don't you help them? So Buddha accepted that offer and decided his mind to teach. But teaching is not easy. So for 3 weeks, he was under Bodhi tree to enjoy his meditative state of mind or enlightenment and contemplating upon how can he deliver the universal truth in a very easy way so that average practitioner can understand and practice. So according to the teaching of Chinese Buddhist master Chen Tai, Buddha taught in 4 periods. For the first 12 years, he taught all the basic teachings of the Buddha Dharma. For example, 4 Noble Truths for the first 2 years. That teaching is contained in the Agama, which means sacred tradition. That's the main Buddhist scripture that the Theravada Buddhists use for the first 12 years. For the next 8 years, he taught bipolar scripture, Bangdengyang, bipolar scripture, where he taught basically the karmic principle of cause and effect and the Dharma of dependent origination. He focused for the next 8 years. When Buddha reached around in mid-50s, he tried to teach Prajna literature. Heart Sutra, Diamond Sutra is a part of Prajna literature. He taught the Prajna literature for 30 years. When you go to India for Buddhist pilgrimage, the guide will always bring you this place, Jetavada. This is where the Buddha taught the Diamond Sutra and the Heart Sutra. The town's name is Bihar. Yeah. And the Naranda University. This is the pagoda of Sariputra. So, let's think about the first teaching of Buddha, Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth, life is dukkha, dissatisfaction. The second, there must be some cause, there must be some origin. Buddha discovered that tanha, tanha Sanskrit literally means thirst, thirst for fame, thirst for money, thirst for recognition, etc. It's usually translated as attachment or craving. That's the origin of suffering. The third noble truth is cessation of suffering. That's why we are here. Cessation of suffering is nirvana. And what is the path to nirvana? Buddha said, A for the path. Right thought, right intention, right speech, right livelihood, right mindfulness, right concentration. That is path to liberation, which he taught 12 years. And for the next 8 years, when he taught Vaipula scripture, what's the origin of why humans transmigrate in various realms of existence? What is the cause of the cycle of birth and death? The ultimate cause of life and death is our ignorance. So, according to the teaching of 12 links of dependent origination, ignorance leads to birth and old age. That's his main teaching. But don't you think it is very weird that in Heart Sutra, it appears he denies his earlier teaching. It says, no ignorance nor extinction of ignorance. Originally, there is no ignorance. If there is no ignorance from the beginning, we do not have to extinguish ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, nor old age and death, nor extinction of them. Life is a suffering. Cause of suffering is attachment, and the A for the path is that path to liberation. That makes sense. But it says, truthfully speaking, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path. So this is what we need to contemplate this morning. This does not sound like common sense. Common sense is formed by our sensory experience from what we see, hear, touch, think. Common sense tells us the sun moves around the earth. For a very long time, whether people are intelligent or not, they believe that the sun moves around the earth. We can see that. But the truth is different. According to the teaching of Einstein, the theory of relativity, when some object moves fast, it becomes shorter. Can you understand? Does that make sense? When object moves very fast, it becomes shorter, physically. And if you move very fast, time flies slow. So the reality is not what we commonly believe. Likewise, this is the ultimate reality that we need to understand. So for example, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path. One starts to lose hair, one is about to become bored. That can be dissatisfaction, but it's up to one's mind. The founder of Mitsubishi Electronic Company, he was born in a very poor family, so he could not have he just graduated elementary school. He was physically very weak. Low schooling background, poverty, weakness of his body, that's a dissatisfaction. But when he became a millionaire, and one day he had an interview with one journalist, but he said to him that since he was born in a really, really poor family, so he said he could understand a lot of people were born in an underprivileged situation. And he had no schooling background, so he learned he had to work very, very hard and diligent. So diligence has become his habit for his whole life because of that unavoidable situation. And because he was physically very weak, since he was very young, he became very mindful in everything, in his diet, exercise, and that habit continued. So all these negative situations, according to him, becomes a source of a blessing. So simply put, everything, whether it's a favorable or unfavorable situation or suffering, it's eventually up to our mind. Even some physical pain. For example, when I was in junior high, our school teacher played soccer with the teachers of the other junior high. One teacher, after the game, discovered his ankle really hurt. When he went to the hospital, he realized that he had a broken bone. But since he was so absorbed in the game, he could not feel any pain. So whether it's a mental or physical thing, everything arises from our mind. So the essence of the Buddha's teaching, in one sentence, everything is of your mind creation. Everything is of your mind creation. So, truthfully speaking, there is no suffering, and when suffering disappears, the cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the path disappears as well. So, A for the path is the path to lead to liberation. So what is the first world of the Shakyamuni Buddha when he attained the great enlightenment? Wow, all sentient beings. He tried very hard to attain Buddhahood. But when he was awakened, he realized not just all humans, all sentient beings are already awakened. They are already Buddhas. They are already there. So the path to lead to liberation loses its meaning. No ignorance, no wisdom, no attainment. The wisdom to attain liberation also disappears. Just like when a disease disappears, the medicine is no longer needed. So the next passage you can contemplate during this retreat. Why we have some worry or anxiety? Because we think there is something to gain. But something to gain presupposes the existence of I. Since there is I, my, me, there follows something we need to accomplish again. But when I disappears, then, as the Heart Sutra says, there is nothing to gain. What we realize is not some objective dharma. It is our true self, which is already inherent within our mind. So you can continue to contemplate. I read one article by one written a Dharma teacher who supervised psychotherapy trainee. And that trainee met one patient. I had one patient who constantly say, I'm the sun, and all of you are planets who orbit around me. That's why he's in that mental hospital. But we are all like this person. Our life revolves, moves around I, my, me. Just like these patients believe and think and say, I'm the sun and all of you are planets who orbit around me. This world, your life, revolves around our sense of self. That is the main cause of suffering and agony. In old days, in China, at the time when China was divided into many nations, they fought each other a lot. One day, one king asked to his teacher, astrologist, fortune teller, when to attack. It's very important. They saw the heavenly movement, constellation, and decide which date is auspicious day or not. So that king asked to his mentor, Master, I think tomorrow is a really auspicious day. We have to attack our enemy. Then the teacher replied, if this is an auspicious day to us, is that auspicious day to them? Just like we think based on ourselves, just like the king thought in that way, look at your life or thought pattern. It always arises from the ground of I, my, me. There was one man who saw a ghost. His house was next to the cemetery. So he heard some white figure in the cemetery. He was very afraid because that ghost attacked him at night. But his friend told him, I know a great Taoist master who can write a talisman, a written chanting phrase to cast off that devil or ghost. So he was so relieved, and he paid a lot of money and received that talisman. And he was so relieved. He always carried that talisman in his pocket. So he discovered he could not see ghosts anymore. It worked. He lived in a very comfortably for 10 years. One day, he could not find out the talisman. So he panicked. What if the ghost attacked me? And he was not sure that Taoist master is alive or not. Fortunately, he was still alive. So he went there to get another talisman. Do you know what the master said to him? The master told the guy, come to me. And he whispered to his ears, you know what? There is no ghost. The teaching of Heart Sutra is like the master's reply. In the beginning stage, the Taoist master was a very wise person. It was useless to tell him the reality. There is no ghost. But for 20 years, he became older and a far more mature person. It was ready to reveal the ultimate reality. So at that time, instead of writing the talisman, he told the reality. There is no ghost. So in the beginning, there is a suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the past is the teaching for the beginning practitioners. When practitioners become very mature, they were there with the Buddha for more than 20 years. At that time, Buddha revealed the ultimate reality. In reality, there is no suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and no past, no ignorance. Even there is no wisdom. No wisdom with nothing to attain. Since awakening is the ultimate antidote to remove our suffering and distress, that's why the person who have the chance to encounter, to read, meet the Heart Sutra, Diamond Sutra are the person who are born with a lot of blessings. So let me quote. Subhuti said to Buddha, world-honored one, will there always be men who will truly believe after coming to hear these teachings? Buddha answered Subhuti, do not utter such words. At the end of the last 500-year period, following the passing of the Tathagata, there will be self-controlled men rooted in merit coming to hear these teachings, who will be inspired with belief. But you should realize that such men have not strengthened their root of merit under just one Buddha or two Buddhas or three, but under countless Buddhas, and their merit is of every kind. Such men coming to hear these teachings will have immediate uprising of a pure faith. Subhuti, the Tathagata will recognize them. Yes, he will clearly perceive all these pure hearts and the magnitude of their moral excellence. So during this retreat, when you have available time, continue to contemplate Heart Sutra and the Diamond Sutra. You do not have to try to understand these teachings. Read, contemplate with no thought so that you can be united with these teachings. Yeah. Thank you.